The story begins in 2025, where technology has not advanced significantly and human civilization is gradually progressing. However, 40 years from now, humans will have developed significantly, even creating a time machine. This trend of technological improvement will continue, but the crime rate, which has been slowly increasing, remains the same even at that time. In the future, some gangsters will send people they kill to the past because the rules and regulations have become very strict. Whenever a gangster commits a murder, it is immediately known. Hence, all gangsters try to eliminate their victims and send them to the past. These gangsters hire certain individuals in the past to kill and bury these victims. These individuals in the past are called loopers. Essentially, loopers work for the gangsters in the future. The gangsters continuously send people to the past using time machines, and the loopers capture and kill them, erasing all traces of their existence. No one has any idea who committed the murder due to these methods. Loopers receive a lot of silver bricks for their work, which allows them to support their families. Due to all these activities, the crime rate in the future keeps rising, but no one knows about it. Now, we are introduced to a looper named Joe, who has been doing this job for many years. Joe continuously eliminates everyone sent from the future by the gangsters to the past. His dream is to build a very nice house for his entire family in New York City, so he works tirelessly day and night. One day, when Joe returns home, he finds his fellow looper, Seth, who is also a looper but is currently in a bit of trouble. Seth hadn't killed the people the gangsters sent from the future to the past, but he had taken all the money from them. Because of this, several men working for someone named Abe were now chasing Seth. Abe was the supervisor of all the criminals working in the future, keeping an eye on all the loopers in the past to ensure they were doing their jobs properly. Abe's men were hunting Seth down to kill him because he hadn't done his job. Seth begged Joe to save his life, and out of pity, Joe hid Seth in his house. Soon, Abe's men arrived at Joe's house, asking about Seth. Abe told Joe that they needed Seth no matter what. Otherwise, he would take all of Joe's accumulated silver bricks. Joe had made many sacrifices to gather those silver bricks, so he chose the silver bricks over Seth. However, before revealing Seth's location, Joe asked Abe not to kill him. Abe agreed to Joe's request, so Joe told him where Seth was hiding. Joe believed they wouldn't harm Seth, but soon after, Seth's body parts started disappearing because the criminals had captured Seth's future version and were cutting off his body parts, causing him to disappear in the past as well. Joe couldn't bear to watch this happen, but at least his life was saved. The next day, Joe resumed his work, continuing to kill and bury the people sent from the future. However, when he killed an old man, all his silver plates turned into gold plates. This meant Joe had killed his future self, and in this way, he broke his own loop, receiving his reward immediately. Joe realized that he would die in the future soon, so he took all his saved silver and gold plates and moved to Shanghai. There, he started living a lavish life, drinking heavily at bars. Soon, he lost all his money in casinos and had very little left. Because of this, he returned to a life of crime, partnering with various people to commit thefts and murders. Joe began to earn money again, but he had grown quite old by then. He fell in love with a woman, married her, and started a family. But his real trouble was just beginning. One day, Abe and his men broke into Joe's house to kill him. They didn't want their men working for someone else, and they feared he might reveal their plans. Following the orders of the Mafia, Abe and his men killed Joe's wife right in front of him. Poor Joe couldn't do anything to save her. As Abe and his men covered Joe with a cloth to capture him, Joe killed them all and used the time machine himself, traveling directly to the past. Upon arrival, Joe found himself face to face with his younger version, the young Joe from 40 years ago. The young Joe tried to kill his older self but failed. The older Joe then returned to his house. When the young Joe chased him, they finally met. The older Joe explained to his younger self that his life was in danger and that 40 years later, he would be killed. He also told the young Joe that the woman he would fall in love with would be killed too. The older Joe's main goal was to save his wife, whom he loved dearly. His secondary goal was to eliminate Abe and all the mafias behind these events. However, shortly after their meeting, Abe arrived with many of his men, determined to capture the older Joe by any means necessary. The old Joe anticipated this, so he wrote something on a map and gave it to the young Joe. However, the young Joe didn't want to put himself in danger, so he tricked the old Joe and tried to run away. The old Joe, trying to save his life, kept running away, but the young Joe realized that they were coming to kill him along with Abe. The young Joe hid in a remote place in the forest, but he had the map given by the old Joe. Following the map, he reached the house mentioned by the old Joe. In this house lived a woman named Sarah with her young son. When Sarah first saw the young Joe, she mistook him for a murderer and, to protect herself, shot him, injuring his shoulder. The young Joe, severely wounded, fell to the ground and told her that he was not her enemy. Sarah then treated his wound and he started feeling better. Meanwhile, the old Joe kept hiding to save his life, but he had written another important detail on the map, which the young Joe read carefully. The young Joe discovered that Sarah's son, named Mike for now, was the present version of the Mafia leader who would become a powerful figure in the future. The old Joe had come back not to kill anyone else but to kill Sarah's son, Mike, who would grow up to be the Mafia leader ruling over everyone. The young Joe shared all this information with Sarah, telling her that her son's life was in danger. However, Sarah didn't fully understand and asked Joe to leave. The next day, a man named Jasper arrived at Sarah's house to ask some questions. Jasper asked Sarah about her family members and who she lived with. Sarah lied, saying her husband and son had gone to a city and would return in a few days. In reality, Joe was hiding behind the sofa, and Mike was slowly coming down the stairs. Joe smartly took Mike back upstairs and calmed him down. Jasper might have been a government agent from the future investigating them. Everything seemed fine, but the next day Jasper caught Sarah. Young Joe immediately went to them and put down his weapon, not wanting Sarah to get hurt. As soon as Sarah moved away, Jasper fired a shot aimed at Mike. Mike fell down the stairs and the scene cut off here. In reality, Sarah had killed Jasper and threw Joe out of her house permanently. Young Joe didn't want his older version to come and kill Mike. He wanted to help Sarah in some way. Meanwhile, the old Joe kept killing everyone in his path to reach the present version of Mike, even though Mike was just a child. The old Joe had stolen several silver and gold bricks and gave them to the young Joe. Despite coming from the future, the old Joe was very concerned about his past version, so he wanted to give all this money to the young Joe. But now, young Joe stood in front of old Joe with a gun, saying he wouldn't let him kill Mike. However, the old Joe was determined to kill Sarah's son, Mike, to prevent him from killing his wife in the future. The old Joe attacked young Joe and then went to attack Sarah and Mike, who were trying to escape in their car. After the car crashed, Sarah and Mike ran for a long distance, but the old Joe kept firing at them. The intense chase and confrontation between the older and younger versions of Joe create a high-stakes climax where both their pasts and futures collide, leading to an unpredictable resolution. A bullet grazed Mike's ear, making him extremely angry. He activated his supernatural powers, creating a massive storm that began to destroy everything around him. Sarah, not wanting her son to get hurt, calmed Mike down and sent him to another place. But then, old Joe captured Sarah and held her at gunpoint. Young Joe, standing at a distance, witnessed all this and was unsure whom to save. At that moment, he realized it was a loop that would not change no matter what he did. Understanding this, young Joe pulled out his gun and shot himself. By doing this, the loop was completely broken, causing old Joe from the future to vanish instantly. With old Joe gone, there was no one left to kill Mike. Mike would grow up to become a powerful mafia leader, but for now, Sarah took her son to a safe place. And with that, our story ends here.